This is Autoline Daily, the show dedicated to enthusiasts of the global automotive industry. According to the latest survey from Plant Moran, Stellantis has the worst relations with suppliers in North America, and it's probably going to get worse. Carlos Tavares, the CEO of Stellantis, says the transition to EVs is going to be a big burden on suppliers, and he warns that there will be a huge shift in the supply base from Western countries to low-cost countries in the developing world. He says the EV race has become a cost-cutting race. Tavares also says Jeep will soon have an all-electric model priced at $25,000 in the U.S. market. We believe it's going to be built on the same platform as the upcoming Opel and Vauxhall Frontera and the Citroën EC3, which sells for about 23,300 euros in Europe. These are modest vehicles with a 44 kilowatt-hour LFP battery pack and 199 miles of WLTP range, which will probably translate to a 150-mile rating from the EPA. The electric motor generates 113 horsepower, 0 to 60 miles an hour takes about 11 seconds, and top speed is 84 miles an hour. Citroën says it will have a cheaper version out next year, just under 20,000 euros, with a smaller battery that delivers 200 kilometers of range. That would probably be 100 miles under EPA testing. A $25,000 Jeep will get lots of headlines, but with specs like that, we don't think it will sell very well in the US market. And by the way, later tonight, Jeep is going to unveil the Wagoneer S, and we'll have the details on that model in tomorrow's show. It looks like China's negotiations with Europe over tariffs are paying off. The EU was about to raise tariffs on Chinese-made vehicles next week, but Reuters reports that the European Commission will delay the vote until after the European Parliament election on June 9th. The EU is considering boosting tariffs on Chinese vehicles to 25%, up from 10% today, which would cost Chinese automakers billions of dollars. China says the EU is being quote-unquote unreasonable and is bargaining hard to stop the tariffs, and it looks like that's paying off. Back in January, Elon Musk warned legacy automakers that unless barriers were put up to block Chinese automakers, they would demolish most of the car companies in the world. But now that the US put up tariffs, and the EU is talking about doing the same thing, Musk says that he's opposed to tariffs on Chinese cars. And here's why we think he changed his tune. Tesla is pushing hard to get FSD, or full self-driving, approved in China. It could provide the company with a major jump in revenue with very high margins, and Musk needs the blessing of Chinese regulators to make that happen. So, coming out very publicly against the tariffs on Chinese cars is going to go over very well in China. But here's where it gets interesting. The Wall Street Journal reports that if Donald Trump gets reelected, he's considering making Elon a policy advisor in his administration. And Trump is very keen on putting up trade barriers and tariffs on Chinese goods. So, Musk may have some more splaining to do before he gets the okay for FSD in China.
Intrepid's NeoVi Pi, allowing automotive engineers to interface, capture, and monitor vehicle data using Raspberry Pi. As a matter of fact, it's the automotive industry's first robust platform for Raspberry Pi, featuring Intrepid CAN-FD technology and Raspberry Pi compute module. The NeoVi Pi is designed for automotive environments, allowing use with relative power ranges and applications. In addition, the NeoVi Pi enables you to use the Raspberry Pi for compute while avoiding additional development to adapt to network environments. That makes the NeoVi Pi powerful enough to solve your vehicle network problems, yet small enough to fit in your backpack. One of many Intrepid tools used for developing zonal architecture and software-defined vehicles.
It looks like the newly formed charging company Iona won't be installing its first EV chargers this summer as planned. Iona is a partnership between BMW, GM, Honda, Hyundai, Kia, Mercedes, and Stellantis that was announced earlier this year and has a goal of building 30,000 charging stations in North America. It initially said the first fast chargers would go in this summer, but without saying who, Ward's Auto reports that 2 of those automakers have confirmed it's unlikely any of Iona's superchargers will be in place by that time. Instead, it looks like the earliest they'll be up and running is by the end of the year. One possible reason for the delay is that Iona now wants to launch chargers with both CCS and Tesla's NACS connector. Automakers are still dealing with defective Takata airbags. Nissan and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration issued a do not drive warning for 84,000 vehicles. The affected models include Sentras, Pathfinders, and Infiniti QX4s that are more than 20 years old now. The airbag inflator equipped in the vehicles can explode during a crash and send out shrapnel that can be deadly. If you own a model that hasn't been fixed yet, Nissan says to call a dealer who will get the vehicle towed and replace the parts for free. The performance version of the Zeekr 007 just beat the lap times of the Tesla Model S Plaid and the Porsche Taycan Turbo S at the Zhejiang circuit in China. It was able to lap the 3.2 kilometer or nearly 2-mile track in a little under a minute and 42 seconds, which is about 3 seconds faster than the Porsche and the Tesla. The 007 performance features an upgraded chassis and suspension, improved aero, performance tires and brakes, and more. Electric motors on the front and rear combine for 475 kilowatts or 635 horsepower, and it can accelerate from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 2.8 seconds. U.S. electric VTOL startup Archer Aviation signed a deal in South Korea to sell 50 of its vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. Mobility company Kakao Mobility plans to purchase the VTOLs for an estimated $250 million. It will then own and operate the eVTOLs in South Korea, offering flights to its 30 million users starting in 2026. The Korean government has set a goal of commercializing urban air mobility by the middle of the decade, and the service is first expected to launch in Seoul. And by the way, Stellantis, American Airlines, and Boeing are all investors in Archer. When it comes to EV parts and components, more and more automakers want to build those things in-house. And with businesses that expand well beyond the automotive industry, the Hyundai Group is better positioned to make that transition. So we were a little surprised to see a report out of South Korea that says Genesis, which is part of Hyundai, is close to a deal with Lucid to buy its EV motors. However, it's not too hard to see why Genesis would want Lucid motors. Its single motor unit, which also includes the inverter and transmission, weighs 160 pounds and is small enough to fit into a carry-on bag, but it makes up to 670 horsepower. Aston Martin even signed up with Lucid for a dual motor unit. Genesis also just created a new performance division and hired an old Porsche guy to run it, so maybe his job will be to incorporate the Lucid motors into its cars. And hey, be sure to tune in to Autoline After Hours this afternoon. We'll have Barry Caldwell from Dassault Systems to show us the latest simulation and virtual tools that are slashing the time it takes to develop a new car. Brett Smith, formerly of the Center for Automotive Research, will join us as well, and Tu Lee from Sino Auto Insights will be on to report the latest automotive developments he saw in China. So, join John and Gary when the action goes live at 3 p.m. Eastern Time on the Autoline website and on our YouTube channel. But that's it for this show. Thanks for tuning in.
Autoline Daily is brought to you by Bridgestone, solutions for your journey. Intrepid Control Systems, over-the-air engineering boost your game. Tejan Automotive Technologies, the formula for better mobility. And by ZF.
When the elements are working against you, being confident in your grip on the road is what really matters. Bridgestone Alenza tires, improved acceleration in wet conditions.
There's nothing wrong with heavy metal.
Hey, lighten up.
But with world-class composite material, Teijin Automotive Technologies makes vehicles lighter, safer, and more eco-friendly.